Greetings to each and every one of you happy warriors, and welcome to the Rabbi Daniel Lapin Show, where, as usual, I, your rabbi, am dedicated to revealing how the world really does work. And seldom is it more clear as to how the world really works than when we examine the interface between the 5 F's, how faith and fitness and friendships and family and finance all connect with one another, and particularly in our day-to-day experiences of how faith, how family and finance interconnect. And very often these deep and challenging explorations are most easily launched by thought experiments and by questions. Ideally, an apparently simple question that has an unexpectedly profound answer. And so the question I will look at today is, why does the profession of escort still exist? Why are there women who will provide intimacy and connection for a fee still in business in this day and age? Or, in other words, why good-looking and successful men often will use escorts? Why would they have to? And that brings to mind the kind of mantras that spread virus-like through the culture and which have infected many minds to the point where people think of it almost as conventional wisdom. Let me give you an example before I home in on the particular mantra I'm thinking of. But Sheryl Sandberg, who was the chief operating officer of Meta, which is really Facebook, from 2008 to 2022. So she was right there at the top of things for many years. And what she said was, a truly equal world would be one where women ran half our countries and companies and men ran half our homes. Now, I think she'd also be implying that she thinks that would be a superior world, that somehow values do not matter as much as biological reality, right? What we want is a world in which countries are headed by female prime ministers or presidents and companies that are headed by female CEOs, and we want half the homes in half the families, half the households in the country to be run by men, not by women. Honey, do you know where my shirts are? Says the woman to the man. Now, this is all sheer foolishness, of course, because all women do not agree on important things. For instance, in the Middle East, and there have been some interesting examples lately of a woman whose child, an Arab woman whose child was being treated for a serious medical disability that could not be treated in an Arab hospital in Gaza. And so the child was being treated in a Jewish hospital in Beersheba. And at the end of it, when the child was successfully operated on and everything was great, the nurses said to the woman, so now your son is going to survive, he's going to be okay. What are your dreams for his future? And she said for him to become a freedom fighter and to even die in a suicide bombing as long as he kills Israelis as well. And the nurse said even Israeli doctors who operate. And the woman said yes. You can see her husband in the clip is trying desperately to try and calm her down and stop her. I mean, he understood that the optics here were not good at all. But yeah, there are women in the world who dream of their sons becoming freedom fighters and dying as a suicide bomber. Now, a Christian woman married to a Christian farmer in the Midwest, I assure you, not one of them is dreaming of her son doing the same thing. And so the idea that, like, oh yeah, let's put women in charge of countries, that'll make a better world because all women, this is simply not true. And look, there are women who believe deeply in the free market, and that would have been, shall we say, Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And then there are, of course, women who believe deeply in redistribution of wealth and practical applied socialism. And there's plenty of women like that as well. Being a woman doesn't in any way define what guides you fundamentally, what your value system is. Well, that mantra is so well, if we had women in charge of the world, there wouldn't be any wars, that kind of thing. And they, through sheer repetition, they gain currency and credibility. Another such mantra is this one: men who have to pay for sex are losers. Everybody assumes that to be the case, but it isn't so. I've always been interested to watch in the evening on Bahnhofstrasse. That means the station road, but it's like the best road in Frankfurt am Main in Germany, and it's just really interesting to see escorts being picked up in the street by normal-looking, average-looking guys driving Mercedes and BMW. And I've seen the same thing in Los Angeles as well. I've seen the same thing. Now, obviously, there's also a lower end of that industry, but the very fact that there is a functioning upper end is interesting to examine. Elliot Spitzer was governor of New York and a wealthy and prominent man who found comfort in the arms of an escort. This is a reality. But why? Why is that? And people who repeat that silly mantra that men who have to pay for sex are losers, it's not true. And these people fail to grasp the essential connection between what in our 5F community we call family and finance. They fail to grasp the essential connection between marriage and money. Now, let me explain a little bit as to why this is and what is actually going on. But before I do that, without spending unnecessary time on it, because you know exactly what I want when I ask you to make sure to subscribe to whatever platform you listen to the podcast on. You know why that's valuable to us. And so I'd appreciate you doing that. And you also know that I am eager for you to be a member of our Happy Warrior community. And apart from having access to the community and working together with other people who are trying to grow and gain on their 5Fs, you also have the ability to tune in to the special bonus podcast on the Happy Warriors members website. And that is a very often an enlargement or an expansion of the podcast that I'm now doing, and things that I share on a non-public level with members in the community. So please join the Happy Warrior community and be part of the world that Susan and I are trying to help grow. So with those two public service messages, subscribe and join. Subscribe to the platform you listen to the website on, subscribe to the podcast, and join the Happy Warrior community. So then let me say that in general, men are better suited to make money than women. Why would that be? Because making money, whether we're talking about finding and killing the bison and dragging it back to the homestead for the family to have food, or whether it means flying to Dubai or London for a week of tough, aggressive negotiating of a transaction, both those activities are just better suited to men. They are, in general, what men revel in doing, and they are confrontational. You do have to confront the bison. You do have to confront the negotiating party on the other side of the table. And in both those circumstances, and this is the important part, in both those circumstances, for a man, the priority is not the feelings of the people on the other side of the table or the feelings of the bison. For the man, it's about winning. And it's really important to understand this, because the country has become incredibly feminized. What I mean by that is that women now take 80% of the doctorates that are issued in psychology. Women dominate in the medical profession now. Women dominate in many areas. And that's fine as long as you know that there will be consequences to that. If there's a problem in the workplace with a man, there's a jerk on a supervisory level or something's happening, the guy will confront it and deal with it, or he'll leave and go to another company where he doesn't have to deal with that sort of thing. Women in general will talk about it with other women, and they will push for action. And so we are now in a situation where men, and I've spoken to, in the last 3 weeks, I've spoken to 3 men high up in large corporations, well-known national, in some cases international companies, names you'd recognize, who have told me that they've got vacancies in their departments, particularly legal and human resources, and there is no question that their career is endangered if they hire a man. They've got to hire a woman. That's all there is to it. So be aware that you may well have a son or a brother or maybe a husband whose financial prospects are imperiled because his employer is going to promote women over men. And one of the consequences of that is that women organize and adjust and try to change the environment in order to make it more woman-like. If you want to know why boys are doing so badly at schools around the country, so much worse than girls, if you want to know why boys are on medication, Ritalin and Adderall, at very high rates compared to the girls, one of the reasons is that the majority of teachers are women. And so, not surprisingly, I don't say this I don't say that they do it to be vexing or they do it to be troublesome. No, it's perfectly natural and perfectly normal for a woman teacher to teach like a woman. That's what she does. And she creates a female-oriented class environment. And girls do better in that kind of environment than boys do. Boys become discipline problems. And despite the fact, and the Dr. Leonard Sachs is a resource for me on some of this information, there's also a whole lot more, that it is not even questioned by anybody anymore that single-sex education K through 12 is superior. Boys and girls do better, and yet they won't turn to it. They will not do it. And so the educational system has become feminized. And part of the general gist of that is to communicate, to negotiate, to talk rather than to confront. And that means very often that issues get swept under the rug in the interests of getting along with people. That is the woman way. And it's a good and wonderful way in the right place. And it's happening everywhere in the culture, in the professions, in business, in entertainment, in publishing. Go and look at the list of recently published fiction books. And if you're a guy, if you're a male happy warrior, I bet you haven't read a single one of them. You know why? Because they're all geared, they're chick-lit. They're all geared to the kind of reading that women do. Well, why should that happen? Well, the publishing industry is, again, made up overwhelmingly of women. And they do a great job, but don't be surprised that they pick authors to publish that they like. It would be weird if it didn't happen that way. We know that in the struggle between free speech and an atmosphere of acceptance and a safe atmosphere, we understand that 2/3 of men favor free speech over making an inclusive, accepting, comfortable, warm environment. And 2/3 of women, exactly the inverse, 2/3 of women favor an accepting and safe environment and are quite happy to toss free speech out of the window. These are real distinctions between male and females. And it's not every single man and every single woman. I mean, we're all varied, but in a country of 330 million people, there is such a thing as generalizations. And so, so you might say, well, that's not how I feel. That's true. And maybe you're 1 out of 100. Maybe it's 99 people feel that way and you don't. It's still going to change the environment and change the culture. And so there are just very real differences. And I'll tell you where else you saw it. In the best news of the last week, the funniest news of the last week, was the heist of the French Museum in Paris, the Louvre. And it was such a classic heist, 4 minutes inside, and they come in with power grinders, with cutting wheels, and in 4 minutes they've cut open the things and escaped with priceless jewelry, and they're out the same window, down the ladder, onto their scooters, and they've gone. Finished. It's happened. But what about all the security men? There are hundreds and hundreds of security people in a museum. What happened to them? Well, you see, what the news may not have shared with everybody, and all the news, you've got to dig for a little bit, is a large number of the security people are women. And so they were intimidated by the men waving their cutting tools at them. And they let the men proceed. For 4 minutes, they were wringing their hands, trying to decide what they should do. Well, 4 minutes was all that the men who were robbing the Louvre needed, and they were out and they were gone. Well, how does all this sort of thing happen? Well, you probably by now know that the head of the museum is a woman, a Lawrence somebody. And you also know that she hired, as the head of security for the museum, another woman. See, because it's important to have equal numbers of men and women. And that woman hired a lot of female security guards. And women in general are more interested in getting on than in confronting. And if there's ever a time you need confronting, it's when you're a security guard and 2 or 3 guys are cutting open a museum case in which are found the priceless jewels of the French Republic. So they really are real. Fine. Fine. Whatever you want to do, go ahead. It's free country. Just be aware of the real life consequences. It's real. Okay, it just is. And so you got to see that in marriage, when we're going for equality in marriage, which Sheryl Sandberg, formerly of Facebook, would like to see, but so would many others. This is the chief mantra of feminism. The man can easily drift into, when it comes to sex, the man can drift into a supplicant role. He becomes almost a beggar for physical intimacy. And I'll say that there's probably very few married women who work as well as run the home, and that's the majority, who do not relate to when I speak of the desperately encroaching husband hand, stealthily creeping towards its objective, while wifey only wants to get to sleep after a hard day at work, and then, a hard evening at work, doing dinner and kids and who knows what else, and homework. I get it. She really isn't interested in anything except getting to sleep. But what's poor hubby supposed to do? And so he pleads and begs. And there are very few things more destructive of a woman's respect for a man that he begs for some contact. However, if their marriage is based traditionally on him basically having said to her, here's our deal. I want you to do me the honor of allowing me to provide the financial support of our home, everything you need, while you concentrate on building our cocoon of harmony and tranquility. And in that situation, where she doesn't have to worry about the outside world, she doesn't have to worry about bills, she doesn't have to worry about anything except being a wife, being a mother. For her, intimacy is now a joyful expression of love and, yes, let me say, appreciation. And that turns into a duality from each to the other. Intimacy is an expression of love and appreciation. And it's something that she knows that she can offer happily and willingly and enthusiastically to her husband. And he is thereby blessed. There's no better word. Such a husband is blessed. Yes, money is a necessary, not exclusive, not the only condition for physical intimacy, but money is part of that. Is it possible for a man to obtain sex without providing money in any way at all? Of course. Yeah, if he is a knave, not a knight. If he's a taker, not a giver. If he's a bad guy, not a good guy. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Because the old philosophy promoted by so many men, it's what really lies behind the men in the pro-abortion movement. It was the playboy philosophy of Hugh Hefner that this is the same for both of us. We're just two equal people seeking joy in one another's arms. That's all there is to it. And when morning comes, we kiss goodbye. You go on your way, I'll go on my way, and that's the end of it. But she feels horrible, sometimes even driven to lesbianism. She feels horrible. He doesn't. He sings the joyful song of the invader, the winner, the triumphant song of he who came and took. She feels used. Now, I'm not saying she wants to feel like a participant in a financial transaction. Of course she doesn't want that either. It's not. If he threw a few dollars onto the bedside table, it'd make it worse. But what she really wants to feel is the feeling of being a wife. And so in many circumstances, in marriage, good men who are providing, but they've been conned into building marriages that feminists approve of, marriages of equality. In many situations like that, a relationship with a professional escort is more satisfying for a man because there is no begging. That's all there is to it. Right? You have to think about it a little bit. It can be shocking and surprising and disturbing, but it is a reality. Yep, that's right. In a marriage situation, for a man having to beg for intimacy is worse than employing the services of a professional escort. And to say that makes the man a loser, no, not at all. That's not true at all. Not recommended, but I don't recommend that kind of marriage in the first place. Many people have been conned into that marriage by decades now of feminist hectoring and indoctrination, and they've proudly created have a marriage of equality. There's only one problem, and that is that men's relationship to physical intimacy is different from women's. And if necessary, they will beg for it in one way or another. And the end result of that is only disaster. Well, I want to finish on a happy note rather than on this somber note. But the happy note is that you do have a better understanding now of how the world really works. That's happy. And you know that once you understand the principles involved, even if you are in a marriage that was mistakenly founded on these doctrines of feminist equality. There are ways of improving them once you know in which direction improvement lies. So I want to wish you all great success as you spend this week trying to be a better, happy warrior, improving your family and your finances. Yes, your marriage and your money, your social life, your friendships, your physical health, your fitness, and yes, your connection with the intangible, your connection with the spiritual, the faith factor. I'm Rabbi Daniel Lapin. God bless.